that we could, I mean, there are so many issues which have been raised in this book, but at the core of it, obviously, there is the basic concern with Hindutva and its manifestations in various ways, whether it is the issue of emotion or ideology, politics, whatever. So I think maybe we can try and address that core issue, and I'll just quote a sentence or two from the book and try to get your reactions to it. The book says, I quote, Hindutva is a strange animal, quasi-real and quasi-manufactured. Part of it is optics and part of it is organic. At one level, it connects the social and the political, and at another level, it disconnects the political from the social. It is partially based on fear, intimidation, and violence, while partially it represents a growing social consent. It is both concrete and abstract. It is imagined, hysterical, and delusional, and therefore unverifiable. But it also speaks to the everyday experiences and instituted lay morality. It is, I think, whether one agrees or disagrees with the exact formulation, but I think the complex nature of what is Hindutva, what is the phenomenon, and how do we grasp it? Is it only emotion? Is it only ideology? Is it a combination? It is much more than that. Does it also, as you said, speaks to everyday experiences, which means you link it then to the economic structure, to the social structure, to the broader political structure. So how does one actually try to get hold of this animal, which obviously has many tentacles and the shapes and, like an amoeba. So I would like to get your reactions to that. Ketkaji, would you like to begin this? Yeah, he said, is this a discussion now? We can just speak from here.
Well, actually, what he has said in that particular statement which was read out is quite objectively true, and yet it can raise some questions. Like, if the Hindutva had its roots in the past, why from 1925, when the RSS was formed, or 1915, when Hindu Mahasabha was formed, and Congress under Gandhi had not really fully taken off in 1915, certainly, because that is the year he came, how come the Hindutva project, which was introduced in politics in 1915 and later on enlarged by RSS in 1925, did not really take off? When Congress was not so strong, Hindutva was a parallel force. Communist Party was formed sometime in 1925, but the communist idea actually impressed and influenced a large number of people and large number of organizations across the country, but does not mean that influenced all of them. But even at that time, if the competing ideologies were Hindutva, Socialist Communist Movement, Gandhiji, and even if you want to include M.N. Roy and others who was also there, if you include all of them. But essentially, why Hindutva did not take off? The next question is, why did it take off only after 2010 and not before? I mean, in the classical aggressive sense as it is today. It was not there in 2010. It was not there in 2009. In 2009, Congress won as many as 206 seats, and BJP did not win more than 118 seats. So in 2009, Congress wins 206 seats, and in 2014, Congress wins only 44 seats. So the fall is so much. So between 2009 and 2014, suddenly the Hindutva scale has expanded. So why? One of my hypotheses is, ever since we opened the economy, I'm not connecting it with the liberalization or economy or nothing, I'm just saying, and the migration to US began of the youth, particularly in Silicon Valley, in computers and technology, Y2K and so on and so forth, we find slowly the NRI community getting more and more Hinduized. And it was the NRI Hindutva which influenced the middle class here. And the growth of middle class, the rise of middle class in terms of income and living standards and overall lifestyle is after 1991, not before. Before 1991, it was difficult for people like us in Mumbai to find a family in our society with even a two-wheeler. And today, or after 2015, we have a problem of parking of the cars. Every family has one or two cars. So in just short time, it has changed the nature of the middle class, and it is this middle class which is the purveyor of the neo-Hindutva. They are impressed of Hindutva idea coming from primarily from US, actually from Europe and diaspora generally, and therefore neo-Hindutva has to be distinguished from the old Hindutva. Old Hindutva did not really impress people as much, otherwise they could have come to power even before. They did not. Not only they did not, the highest number that the BJP had or Chen Sung had was in 1967 or something like 35 or 37. And ever since, actually, in Communist Party had something like 61 seats in 2004. So the relative ideological strength of Hindutva was less, much less, almost insignificant, but it had captured the imagination of the different ruling classes. The ruling classes included the new middle class also inspired by the NRI.
Thank you. I'll just add one little footnote to it so that others can take it up, carrying your point forward. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing, but do you think that the rise of Islamophobia in the West in a very big way from the first decade of the 21st century after the attack on the World Trade Towers and all that, when it comes up in a very big way, does it feed into this?
I'll just add one.
Does it contribute?
Yeah, it does.
Because your root is the middle class and NRIs. How much does the two...
It does contribute, but I did not want to stretch the subject beyond a certain point. Let us not forget, after the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 and the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, the book was published first originally as an article called Clash of Civilizations. Fukuyama's End of History comes in 89-90, and Clash of Civilizations of Huntington comes in 93, and later on book form in 95-96. Till that time, ideologically nobody was mentioning Islam as a global enemy. But after 1995-96, after that book, US almost officially said Islam is a threat. And that was further perpetuated by 2001. 9/11 created the situation favorable for the Islamophobia, and as I said, since NRI was influenced by the ideologies in US, it is inevitable or rather possible that after 2001, the Islamophobia, as far as India is concerned, acquired Hindutva. Islamophobia acquired different form in US and different form in Europe, but as far as India is concerned, Islamophobia actually raised the new Hindutva campaign.
Thank you. I can see you wanting to.
हाँ, actually, normally मैं केतकर साहब से disagree नहीं करता हूँ पार्लियामेंट के अंदर, लेकिन आज थोड़ा disagreement. Also because we come from two different backgrounds. On Islamophobia, Ajay ji, at one point you write, where in fact you deny the use of by Muslim internationally recognized term Islamophobia, because apparently according to you, phobia is fear of unknown. No, sir. Phobia is a fear of known also. Any book on abnormal psychology can tell all of us. So, Ketkar Sahab, what he said, and what you said you are not linking, I go a step further, and I believe Hindutva's success in this format is on account of neoliberal movement, neoliberal capitalism, global movement of capitalism with all its shifts. It has a ready traction. Look at the kind of question people ask you. Who is your leader in your alliance? As if you are buying a pouch of shampoo or a soap. I mean, this is neoliberal vocabulary. 52, it was not asked. 57, it was not asked. Even 77, this question was not asked. But in 2024, even, we have a Patna meeting on 23rd. Every journalist is concerned. अच्छा नेता चेहरा कौन है आपका? चेहरा कौन है? चेहरे का तो नतीजा देख लिया 9 साल में. Let's be very clear. Second, you know, when I look at his book and the contemporary debate, yesterday Gita Press Gorakhpur has been given Gandhi Peace Prize, right? I have no objection to Gita Press. They publish a particular kind of literature. हर घर में 4 आने का हनुमान चालीसा पहुंचाया उन्होंने. But Gandhi Peace Prize has a mandate. It has Gandhi and peace. What have you done on peace building? Promotion of peace. Now, what is this? This is Modi style Hindutva politics. तालाब में एक कंकड़ मारो, लहरें पैदा होंगी, 2 दिन इस पे डिबेट होगा, and real issues shall be sidelined. He's going to US. He wanted to go in peace. He had images of Manipur, of Uttarakhand. He wanted some kind of respite. So there is 24/7 strategy for this Hindutva, which is supported by capitalism in the form of, if you look at the political economy of capitalism. A second point, Islamophobia. So, before Samuel Huntington, if you just examine the movies published, made in India from 1980s, it will tell you the extent of Islamophobia which was coming. One of my students worked on it. Representation of Muslims in Indian cinema. मैं छोटा दृष्टांत देता हूँ. 60s में जो मूवी थी, हालांकि वो भी वाहियात ही थी, उसमें सारे मुसलमान नवाब दिखाए जाते थे, जिनको शतरंज खेलने के अलावा और सुराही से शराब पीने के अलावा कोई काम नहीं था. और 80s में आकर के सडन, और अगर उसमें कहीं अजान होती थी तो उसके बाद लोग गले मिलते थे. अब अजान के बाद अरेस्ट हो रहा है, धमाके हो रहे हैं. This is a shift which we have seen in our own lifetime. Modi comes much later. He got a fertile ground. That fertile ground could not have been prepared in 1960s, 1970s. And sorry to say, the Nehruvian project and the constitutional morality question of Babasaheb Bhimrao Ambedkar was too powerful an ideology for this kind of rabid ideology to have any kind of shape. And finally, sir, I'm responding largely to you. Sorry. एक फर्क हम सबको समझना होगा. आपने भी ये गलती की है. 10 साल के विश्लेषण पे आपने कह दिया कि ये हो ही नहीं सकता, ये हो ही नहीं सकता, कि ये सेंटर में ऐसे वोटिंग होती है. और आपका सबसे अच्छा सिंपैथेटिक ब्रश मिला है अरविंद केजरीवाल जी को. हम लोगों को तो आपने ख़त्म ही कर दिया रीजनल पार्टीज़ के बारे में. हाँ, और अरविंद जी को बहुत अच्छा आपने कहा. तो अरविंद जी का स्लोगन भी था ना कि नीचे केजरीवाल ऊपर मोदी. तो अरविंद जी के बारे में मैं आज ये चूँकि मौका नहीं, मैं कुछ कहना नहीं चाहता, लेकिन मैं सिर्फ इतना कहूँगा कि इट्स वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू होल्ड योर ग्राउंड, और लोएस्ट हैंगिंग फ्रूट से बचना भी चाहिए हम लोगों को. अभी बहुत अच्छा वरुण ग्रोवर की एक छोटी सी क्लिप आई है अरविंद जी की पॉलिटिक्स पे. आई एम नॉट सजेस्टिंग यू टू सी दिस. हाँ, एनीवे, वी मस्ट शिफ्ट आवर फोकस. हम इलेक्ट्रल पॉलिटिक्स के नतीजे में बहुत बात करते हैं. इलेक्ट्रल पॉलिटिक्स इज नथिंग. अरिथमेटिक माइट हेल्प यू टू डिफीट मोदी इन 2024. I have always maintained, and I do so even in the opposition meetings, that the repair and retrieval which is required after his defeat is much more important. It might take 50 years. This is what is very important. Electoral victory is arithmetic. कर्नाटक जीत गए, मैं तो बता रहा हूं. On a lighter note, I am telling you, he shall be 70 seats down. I hope Satpal Malik ji don't have to give a statement again or a hint again. 70 seats at least on a rough and conservative estimate. His majoritarian politics shall not survive on 230 seats. It needs to cross to 272. But the ideological battle which we have lost should also be seen not only in the success of BJP, but in the failure of all of us. you including, Congress I mean, not you as a person, and all of us, including my dear comrade, this failure as a grammar. We thought, वो तो टिपिकल मार्टिन न्यूवेलर वाली कविता थी कि अच्छा अच्छा उसको नुकसान होगा मैं बचा रहूंगा, उसको नुकसान होगा मैं बचा रहूंगा. टुडे इफ ऑल पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज आर कमिंग टुगेदर जस्ट फॉर वन रीजन कि नुकसान सबका हो रहा, नुकसान आपका हो रहा है. आई विश दीनदयाल उपाध्याय नाम ना हो जाए आपका, फिर बड़ी मुश्किल भी होगी कि मैं कुछ आके यहाँ बोल भी नहीं पाऊंगा. That's it. I wanted this framework to be little elastic, moving beyond electoral politics. And then regional parties. अक्सर मैं आखिरी मैम 1 मिनट लूंगा. अक्सर रीजनल पार्टीज के बारे में ऐसे चर्चा होती है जिससे कोई घाव हो, कोई खुजली जैसी चीज हो, खराब चीज हो. रीजनल पार्टीज आर रूटेड इन द रीजन. They represent the regional aspiration. And there is no binary which should tell you that regional parties don't have national outlook. There are national parties which have a very parochial outlook. There are regional parties which actually don't remain silent when Article 370 is abrogated, when 35A is suspended in Jammu and Kashmir. That's all. Thank you, sir.
Comrade Raja, would you like to speak on this point, on the Hindutva? Or, I mean, it's not necessary, you can take up other issues.
Comrades, the idea of establishing a theocratic state is not new in our country. When we won the independence, the journey of independent India started with tragedies. Hindu-Muslim conflicts everywhere, dead bodies on the pavements, on the streets. Later on, Gandhi was assassinated. That was the time Dr. Ambedkar was laboriously working on the drafting of constitution. Ambedkar was brought under pressure, tremendous pressure. The pressure was Ambedkar should agree to declare India as a theocratic nation. That was the time Ambedkar emphatically rejected. If at all Hindu Rashtra becomes a fact, becomes a reality, that will be the greatest calamity for the nation. Ambedkar said. And when he said, whatever phobia you speak, it was an answer to all phobias. India can never become, should never become a theocratic nation, theocratic state. India should remain a secular democratic republic. It was Ambedkar. It was Ambedkar. Later on, why this has emerged? Why this has emerged? The ideology is important. That's why Mr. Modi declares communism is the dangerous ideology. It comes as a wildfire, it destroys everything. He knows communism is the ultimate enemy for all this theocratic politics, politics of polarization. And here there are problems. Ambedkar again made it clear. It is the task of the state to ensure all means of livelihood to all citizens, men and women. There was a debate in Constituent Assembly also. Some people asked Ambedkar, why you are not using the word socialism? Ambedkar said, whatever I have said in Directive Principles of State Policy, nothing but socialism. Now there is a discussion on Nehruvian policies. What is the Nehruvian policy? Nehru was the first Prime Minister. The Planning Commission was established. Public sector was built. Heavy industries were built. Institutions of higher learning were built. In 1990s, what happened? Including Congress. They opted for neoliberal economic policies, which as communists we opposed. I was in Tigar prison along with Comrade Surjit, Comrade Indrajit Gupta, because we conducted civil disobedience movement against neoliberal policies. Now, Mr. Modi aggressively pursues the same the neoliberal economic policies. Planning Commission has been dismantled by Modi. Niti Ayog. Niti Ayog or Ayog? I don't know. Yeah, whatever you may pronounce. And what is its task? To propose privatization of all public sector undertakings. I raised this issue in Parliament. No answer from the government. Now, as left, we are fighting against this privatization. And in fact, Mr. Gudavarthy has written, Congress, regional parties, left should work together. Again, he says, OBCs, SCs, and minorities must come together. What does it mean? We should understand. I know when OBCs, Dalits were together politically in Uttar Pradesh, BJP could not win. Once they were split and BJP managed to win. Now BJP is targeting the OBC communities as well as Dalit communities in the name of building Hindu identity. What Hindu identity? I want to know. What is Hindu identity? It is Sanatan, it is Manusmriti, which tries to perpetuate the caste system, perpetuate inequality. In Tamil Nadu, Periyar fought against the Sanatan Manusmriti. Periyar fought for social justice, social reforms. Periyar fought for women's rights, even to the extent of arguing for widow marriages. Now, the time has come. The left, and when I say left, Marx, those who follow Marx, those who believe in Marxist ideology, and those who follow Ambedkarite ideology, those who follow social reformers like Periyar, all must come together. Then only we can stop the Hindutva, whether it is soft Hindutva or hard Hindutva, I don't care. Hindutva must be fought. This is what we should understand. I am not sectarian. I am not sectarian. I can be secular. My secularism is different. I used to go to college by bicycle. I had to cross one river. My mother used to come up to the bank. There is a small deity of Mariamman. My mother, suddenly she will stop for a minute. She will say, "Hey Mari, my son is going to college. He must return safely." She appointed Mariamma deity as my security. You understand the understanding of common people. And no hatred to other fellow citizens. That is communist ideology. No hatred to other fellow citizens. But all should have liberty, equality, fraternity. What is that fraternity? Again I quote Ambedkar. Ambedkar insisted that equality, liberty, fraternity form a trinity. You cannot separate one from other. What is our commitment to Ambedkarites? This constitutional position? What is our commitment to the justice for the people? Even when justice was mentioned, the Constitution makes it clear. Social, political, and economic. Social. Where is the social justice? And you talk about emotions. I am asking, I raised this issue in Parliament. When a small girl in Madhya Pradesh, Dalit girl, went to fetch water from a public tube, and she was attacked. Do you remember? I asked, what is this civilization you talk about? A small girl cannot fetch water from public well, and her shadow fell on somebody else. Because of that, she has been attacked. A Dalit boy cannot grow moustache, he is lynched. A Dalit boy cannot ride horse at the time of wedding, he is lynched. What is this civilization we keep talking about? Indian civilization. I question the very Indian, so-called Indian civilization. They call, always claim Bharat Mata. I asked in Parliament, who is your Bharat Mata? Please show me. If you ask me, who is my Bharat Mata? I tell you, you come out in the lavatories, toilets, who are working as Safai Karmacharis, they are my Bharat Matas. I said. And come out, see the school-going teachers, bank employees, office goers, women, they are my Bharat Matas. Go to any agricultural field, shedding blood and sweat, producing food, one agricultural worker woman, she is my Bharat Mata. And a tribal woman living in jungle and saving the jungle, Jameen, Jal, everything, and she is my Bharat Mata. Are you concerned about that Bharat Mata? Where is your emotion when my Bharat Matas are harassed and attacked and raped? And what happened? And Modi claims India is mother of democracy. And our mother has been ignored. Murmu, the Rashtrapati, she could not be allowed to go to new parliament. And constitution says, the parliament as Indian state means what? The president, who is the commander-in-chief of all defense forces, who is supposed to be the custodian of the constitution, and the two houses of parliament, that is Indian state. But here, what is happening? That is where we should think over. As communists, we have been proposing that we must have a proper agenda. That agenda should be related to the fundamental issues of livelihood of the people. Education, healthcare, employment, housing, food, all should be guaranteed to our people. And when I say ideology, as communists, I do believe the communist ideology must be applied to the local conditions, taking into the specific issues in the society. And we have pointed out class, caste, patriarchy are the fundamental issues of Indian society, and how to fight these discriminations, caste, class, because Mr. Gudavarthy has raised that issue. OBCs, Dalits, the minorities, how to unite them? Or Congress party, regional parties, and the left should come together. How to bring all these forces together? And we have been arguing, whether it is Congress party or any regional party, you may not take left of center position, but don't take right of center position. You claim centrist, but don't take right of center position. Take left of center. One can understand, or remain centrist force. And we will have to come together on this particular agenda, the agenda for fighting for the livelihood of the people, And this religious fundamentalism, whether it is Hindutva or anything, we can fight. And our people have that maturity to fight this religious communal fascism. And RSS, Mr. Ketkar referred, Communist Party was formed in 1925. RSS also formed in 1925. But RSS was rabid communal force since beginning. Rabid communal force, we should understand. Now they talk of one India, one culture, everything. Finally, what is going to happen? One India, one leader, one party. Is it a democracy? Is it nothing but dictatorship, fascist dictatorship? How to stop this? How to stop this? There, I think people should be emotionally charged, and people should be taught about ethics, how to love the fellow human being, as Buddha taught us. And politics must be on this basis. Politics. There we need to fight for political power, and that is where, as my comrade Manoj has said, the secular democratic parties are coming together in order to throw BJP out of power in 2024 elections. And BJP is getting jittery. You should take note. I am coming from Jharkhand straight away here, and I understand the mood of the people. After Karnataka, there is desperation, jittery on the part of BJP. And here we should use this emotion. Here we should use this emotion to mobilize the people and move the people forward to win the political power. Politics. And politics must be decided by the people, and people will decide what kind of politics our nation needs today. Thank you.
I request Chikiva to make his comment, and then Ajay will speak. And then we'll open up to the audience.
So I'll take 1 minute for this because the time is running. On Hindutva, I would like to just take one point from Ajay's book, is that the mere idea of this present regime is that Hindutva is that reconfiguring the hierarchy. That means bringing back the severe caste system into the society. We don't want 5 billion, trillion, whatever that economy Modi says, I do not understand, even though I just done my PhD and all. What I want is a Rozgari. Minimum, my people should have a decent social security, and they need to have a kind of employment, and they need to safely go to their home after earning their wage up by evening. This is what I want. This hierarchy is completely pushing us to whatever that is the that what they was ancient times, they were dictating, enjoying the privileges. We don't want that kind of slavery again. So with this I just appeal to that, that we don't want a hierarchy again, we want equality. What Ambedkar had entire his life fought for the equality. We don't want the life above the people. We want equal life. That is we want.
I'll speak from this. 5 minutes.
The teacher loves the podium.
So let me begin by first thanking Pushparaj and Samruddh Bharat Foundation for taking the initiative to organize this book discussion. Then my senior colleague, Professor Mridula Mukherjee, for readily agreeing to chair this session today. And then Dr. and Comrade Raja, I think he was not keeping well, but very readily when we reached out, he agreed. And our good friend Manojji, who is always with us, making very strong interventions. So he's one person we take for granted that he will be there when we approach. And Kumarji, I met him recently in Bombay, and I should share, since Madam is there, it was a love at first sight for both of us. So this is, you have some competition, Madam, now. So thanks to all of them, senior public figures. So it's fortunate that they're all here, because all of them take very strong public positions, and so I was very eager, more than eager to speak. I was more eager to listen to them, that how they would respond to the book, some of the propositions in the book. Of course, we do not have the time, though the way Pushparaj decided to get into some of the details, but I was always suspicious whether that would be possible in a mass gathering of this kind. And with politicians, it's always difficult to have engaged long, it's details. We need a different kind of a setting for that. This may not be the occasion. But to just stretch on few points that each one of them has made, I think many of them touched, all three of them have touched on all three key points, but the core focus of the book is obviously all those other issues exist, but beyond ideology, strategy, economy and resources, do emotions and ethics really have certain autonomous velocity in mass mobilizations today? That is the key question, which is not to deny the role of rest of the factors, but there is perhaps a need in the current majoritarian impasse to locate certain social space, certain space in our collective imagination that people can be mobilized through emotions, through ethics, and that's a very elusive, those are very elusive categories. So how does that happen? So that was it's a kind of very preliminary attempt to also argue that emotions are neither beyond interest nor emotions are necessarily irrational. That emotions are people's evaluative. Also, emotions are not merely experiential, but they're also evaluative. That people evaluate, make sense of reality, because we are entering into modern, complex, post-Westphalian societies, which are nation states, which are global. The people find it very difficult to make sense of some of the changes that are happening in terms of economy, in terms of breakdown of social structure. And people find alternate ways of making sense of this reality, and that's where I feel that everyday open-ended ethics, everyday experience, emotions are the way people evaluate and make sense of what is happening around them. And that's where perhaps right has had an advantage in some sense of locating their ideological framework rooted in everyday experiences and everyday emotions. Why should that be is a great historical question. Can left, secular, democratic, progressive parties reproduce that model in a different way? Can be another very important question. Do positive emotions of love, care, compassion, are they as open to mobilizational capacities as those of hatred and other kinds of emotions that right generally mobilizes? Those were the questions that really interested me in this book. And that is where I felt that that there are certain elusive things that we have been witnessing which have to be made sense of. One, I agree with many of the panelists where they said that neoliberalism and rise of Hindutva are coterminous. This version of Hindutva, aggressive Hindutva and rise of neoliberalism, rise of new middle class, as Ketkarji pointed out, global capital, as Manojji was pointing towards, undoubtedly true. But just to pause and see that if one were to believe that people were angry with Congress in 2014 because of economic reforms, because of poor implementation of welfare policies of MNRG, how does one explain the fact that the same people who are angry with neoliberalism votes back a more aggressive neoliberal, more pro-corporate, more ruthlessly capitalist political party in place? Therefore, obviously, neoliberalism by itself can put a frame in place, but by itself cannot explain what is happening today. That people are angry with neoliberalism, but people vote more pro-corporate. That's happened even in the United States. People were unhappy with the Rust Belt crisis of the white working class, then voted Trump, who is even more pro-corporate, even more corrupt than the previous government. So how does one explain this? Obviously, there is something that is elusive about modern complex societies. It is not so linear, it is not so binary. So that's one of the starting points of my inquiry in the book, that something else must be happening which can explain this kind of a very diabolical situation that people seem to be working against their own self-interest. That we all are able to see this very clearly, that what has happened to economy, what has happened to institutions, what happened to democracy, media. But people might still, in spite of all this, even the three panelists would say 2024, we are not sure. It can still be a pro-Modi vote. We are still saying, is it 50 votes, it is 60 seats, could it be even, some are saying that it might even go beyond 300. We don't know. None of us sitting here, we are sure of the damage the current government has done on all parameters of human development, happiness index. Look at unemployment, 45 years, media we democracy has dropped us on the democracy index. But still, the question remains, when come 2024, we are not sure. This should tell us something deep is happening in democracies, not in India. I think this is a global phenomenon. We just got the results in Turkey of Mr. Erdogan coming back with 52%. And Turkey had a similar experience, Manoj, 45 years, worst unemployment, economy's highest inflation that Turkey has ever, high rate of displacement. People have voted back Erdogan. So which may not be, hope not. We are hoping against hope. That's not case. So there is something deep churning happening. Therefore, I think we have to really dig deep. Our old social categories of analysis somewhere are proving to be inadequate. And we need to, I think, innovate a new set of categories. And I think Hindutva, therefore, I would argue, and that is my critique of the category of Islamophobia, is that Hindutva cannot be limited to Islamophobia. Hindutva is a larger project of reconfiguring social power the way it's working. And in that sense, I would argue, the excessive focus on Islamophobia is actually a red herring, that they would want us to keep our eyes focused and glued on this anti-Muslim bashing, while they are reconfiguring on the ground question of caste, question of class, question of rural, urban, gender, religion, ethnicity, nationality. Otherwise, there is no reason why there should be so much of violence in Manipur today. It's not a Hindu-Muslim violence that's happening in Manipur. So there is Hindutva has to be seen, whether we like it or not, as an alternative social framework. They are providing an alternative, regressive, illiberal social form. But the danger is that there might be historical scope for us to get a durable social consent. As Manoj rightly said, elections cannot be our only criteria. And that is where I think we need to raise new set of historical questions as to social, democratic, left, regional, secular parties might need to re-innovate some of the social categories. And that is where I think Comrade Raja has pointed out that we need to, that my emphasis on the question of solidarity. That today perhaps is a historical context where we'll have to redefine justice not merely as equality, but justice as solidarity. That how do you bring contesting social groups, and that is what is the strength of Hindutva. That what Hindutva does is that it brings conflicting social groups under a common umbrella of Hindu identity. To what extent it is working, how durable is it, how deep is it, is a question that one can debate. But today they have proven at least a case that a Dalit can also be a Hindu. You can be Dalit for the purposes of gaining representation, and you can be Hindu to gain purpose of recognition. So what we thought are dichotomous binary oppositions, Hindutva has reworked it into a non-disruptive continuity. And this, I think we need to take that project seriously, because it is presenting, it is speaking to certain contemporariness. I don't have the time, but the book does hopefully some part of it. And that is where I think we need to revisit this question of solidarity. As you, sir, rightly pointed out, I think Dr. Ambedkar was prescient in many of his foresights in terms of the return of the kind of counter-revolution that Dr. Ambedkar spoke about is perhaps what we are witnessing today. That what he cautioned, that is continuous emphasis on the idea of fraternity. So my question, one of the questions is that what is that concrete social form of fraternity? So that is my lament of regional parties, Manoj, not my dismissal of regional parties, that regional parties will have to, because of their vernacular character, they will have to play a much larger role. That what would this coming together of caste groups, what is to coming together of religious groups that we rhetorically talk as secularism, what does it mean on the ground? Does it mean common neighborhood? Does it mean more inter-religious marriages? Does it mean more inter-caste marriages? I don't think we have clarity. But Hindutva has a certain clarity of a regressive, hierarchical, well-defined social form. But we do not know what our social form is, how to bring these contesting groups which suffer from rhetorical mutual prejudices. Today, what is happening in Uttar Pradesh, what I was talking to Manoj, that conflict between OBCs and Dalits is at the heart of the way BJP is able to reconfigure. Our secular language disallowed us that space to articulate these rather uncomfortable questions. We bracketed them all under a secular rubric. But now, again, one can ask why now? Again, that has a long historical process. Under the Nehruvian era, I think the social gap was so high that that kind of an accommodative character of Congress worked. Today, thanks to 70 years of democracy, again thanks to Nehru, Gandhi and constitutional vision, there has been a secular social democratization that has happened. That groups are vying for in a different way. And that's why we need a different language. That old kind of accommodative politics of accommodation of the centrist kind, centrist liberalism is not working. And this is a crisis of centrist liberalism across globe, not just in India. So it is not, so we'll have to reinvent Gandhi and Nehru. I don't think Gandhi, Nehru will have answers to the questions that we are picking up today. Gandhi and Nehru were relevant in their own times. They were universalists of their times. They talked of questions of justice. They would continue to remain relevant, but I don't think they will provide us ready-made answers to the kinds of new, sharper challenges we are facing on ground. And that is why we need to reinvent them. And that the book is a very, very, very preliminary attempt in terms of looking at this question. These new questions have come on board, and it is time that we tackle them as part of our counter-majoritarian agenda. That's where I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ajay. That really brought the whole discussion into the proper focus.
Unfortunately, if you look at the basket of political parties which are contemplating to come together, they come from varied backgrounds. And when we speak about ideology, the commonest definition of ideology is your worldview. They differ in their worldview. So you have to come together not on the entire box of ideology, but the slices of it, which what Comrade Raja said, that is very important. Let's preamble be the fulcrum of our coming together. Because the kind of destruction or decimation or damage which has been done to the ideas enshrined in the preamble, that kind of damage was not done even in the emergency era. Having said that, one thing which I had asked for one extra minute, please make differing analysis of 2014 and 2019 election. 2014, you would not find Mr. Modi crossing that line quite often. He wanted to appear as a business-friendly, no-nonsense, workaholic. That kind of campaign was there. So that extra 7% vote was in that kind of belief, which you referred to. 2019 was fundamentally different. Look at the campaign. मैं एक छोटा आप लोगों को व्यक्तिगत अनुभव सुनाना चाहता हूँ. मैं 2018 में संसद में आया. In the month of December, while we were closing for that session, Comrade was there. In the central hall, BJP के members जब हमसे handshake कर रहे थे ना, एक uncertainty थी. We may not come back. हम लोगों को एक सर्टेनिटी आ गई थी क्योंकि कई सर्वे आ गए थे तभी जो बता रहे थे बीजेपी के नॉट क्रॉस 205 और 10 ये सारा. Then Balakot happened. Pulwama happened. Then Balakot happened. After that, it was no more an election. We had lost it the day it happened. Satpalji said it quite late, but then it was no more an election. So when you said Turkey, I was just worried about that. I was also keenly watching Turkey election. I've been to Turkey and I know Erdogan is fundamentally no different from the gentleman we have here. Finally, my last observation is fear and anger as emotion. We have never seen the application of it before 2014, at least at the scale which we have seen. So at one point of time, I wrote to the Election Commission that the ideas enshrined in Article 324, which says free and fair election, please don't confine it to only money and muscle. When I'm angry, when I'm afraid, and none of them are true, there's a climate of fear generated and a climate of anger generated. When I go down to vote, it is not free and fair election. Thank you.
One simple point: in 2014, Modi presented himself as the image of a developer, modern, non-communal person. That is not true. Between 2002 riots and 2012 elections, which I covered as a journalist, heightened campaign of Hindutva along with Togadia. Later on, Togadia was marginalized. The influence on the middle class of that Gujarat Hindutva was there also in other areas of the middle class, not only in Gujarat, elsewhere also. In fact, people were in section of the middle class, particularly upper caste, were happy what happened in Gujarat. So Modi's image was not only that of a development man, only that of a modern man, only that of a businessman. He also had a grand baggage of 2002 of hate Muslim. Only small point. In 1947, after the riots, and before Gandhiji's murder, Pandit Nehru wrote later to chief ministers, before Gandhiji's murder, that the threat to the country is from the Hindutva forces. He wrote it in September 1947. And he thought that if these people come to power, the injury will be so much that it would be very difficult to get out of that injury. That was in 47. Interesting thing is, despite the Holocaust of lakhs of people getting killed and becoming homeless, the Hindutva did not succeed. There was no riots in Mumbai after partition. After Gandhi murder, there were some riots. But otherwise, by and large, South India did not see any Hindu-Muslim distinction. So Hindu-Muslim distinction did not take place, though it was generic to a certain extent in India, about which Manoj mentioned, but it was not so much, it was not so violent, so aggressive, and so defining for the power. So power has come much later, after the economic well-being of the new middle class, inspired by the new Hindutva in US.
Comrades, I have a brief response to two questions, one by our friend sitting there. That is, opposition should have an ideology. When I spoke, I made it clear. Those who follow the ideology of Marx, those who follow the ideology of Ambedkar, those who follow the ideology of reformers like Periyar must come together and work together. That is the only way to resist, whether it is soft Hindutva or hard Hindutva or whatever you may call. The communal, fundamentalist, fascist forces can be resisted. That ideological base. This is my first response. Second, our young friend asked the conflict between OBCs and Dalits. It is a fact. There is conflict between OBCs and Dalits in many parts of the country. And BJP is, yes, in fact, BJP is creating those conflicts in many parts of the country, including Tamil Nadu, I am telling you. And BJP is targeting the activists among Dalits, activists among OBCs, and they spend huge money, and they have the, what do you call, social media, everything to spread poison, venom. This is happening. That should be overcome. I referred to Uttar Pradesh, when OBCs and Dalits, I mean the parties were together, BJP could not win. Once a split among the OBCs and Dalits took place, BJP took advantage. So this we should understand. And BJP being a right-wing party, it goes to any extent to instigate clashes among different sections of the people. They talk about Hindu identity. OBCs are mobilized in the name of Hindu identity. And the Dalits are mobilized in the name of Hindu identity. What is Hindu identity has got to do with the Dalits? And the Dalits were not part of your four Chaturvarna. They were outcasts. They were untouchables. And now suddenly they woke up and say, oh, Dalits are part of Hinduism and Hindu identity. And in the same way, OBCs, how to confront all these things ideologically, politically. That is where I think the young people like you, the enlightened, educated people like you, should move to the people. And our friend asked, what should be the agenda? I mentioned the agenda. Professor Gudavarthy says all human development indices, India is very low, at the very low position. Why it is happening? That is where we must have an agenda. That agenda is on the issues of livelihood of the people, education, employment, healthcare, housing for our people, and food for our people. Even today we have the largest number of hungry people in India. Are we not ashamed? Modi should be ashamed when he goes to America. I am coming from a country where hungry people are largest. Can you do that? Now G20. What is this G20? Mother of democracy. One earth, one world, one civilization. What is it? So we must question all those things. So first we must question. And Modi doesn't want people to question his policies. BJP, RSS do not want people to criticize their policies, question their policies. If you question, you become anti-national. I do not explain in JNU. You know, if you question the government, you will become anti-national. You will become urban Maoist or Naxalite. This is what is happening in our country. That is where we should show the courage. And there I agree, emotion, courage. People should be made courageous to stand up and fight. And who can defeat people? People are the real power. This we should understand, we should move. Because we are fighting, not just change of government. We are fighting for change of society. We are fighting for building a new India free from all exploitations, all enslavements, and ensuring justice for all people. This is what I respond. Okay?
Thank you very much. I think we've completely run out of time now, so I will not make any substantive remarks. I will only make one point, which I think somewhere has perhaps got left out of the discussion, which is, and we are talking of emotion, so I think it becomes extremely important. I think it's very, very important that we keep in mind that the BJP RSS framework rests very strongly on projecting itself as the true nationalists. They are always trying to appropriate the ideology and emotion and the ethics of the freedom struggle to themselves. Here, I think, as you know, they are always trying to steal the leaders from the freedom struggle, you know, whether it's Sardar Patel or Subhash Bose. You would imagine that they were all leaders of the Hindu Mahasabha or hardcore RSS members from the way they are claimed. So why is it so important? And why, therefore, is it so important for us also in all the critique that we are, forming in that total picture? It is very important that we deny them this legitimacy. Because let's not forget that even today, the nationalist plank, on whosever side it is, does provide a great deal of legitimacy. You just said, what did Manoj ji say? After Pulwama and Balakot, he said the story was over in that election. There was no election, he said. If that is true, what he said, what was it about? It was about nationalism. So that swept completely everything else. because they appropriate it to themselves. And that is the big danger, which is that at any crucial point, you can always create a situation. And in the meantime, through all these little, whatever it is, forays here and there, whether it is the Savarkar story or whatever it is, there's a constant attempt to say we are the true nationalists. And I don't think that is something that, along with all the other things about the anti-Muslim plank, the socially regressive plank, the hierarchical order, etc., which are all very much part of that whole architecture of Hindutva. But I think nationalism has to remain very much part of that if we are to understand it, and also if we are to counter it. That is, and let us remember also, how did the freedom struggle counter communalism? Because they had to counter it in a big way. Right from the 20s, when the RSS and came up, and when the Muslim League came up, and when Sikh communalism came up, it was not only Hindu communalism that had to be countered. Along with secularism as the alternative, it was also the claim, and the rightful claim, that the true nationalists were elsewhere and not here, that went in the favor of those who succeeded in beating back. Yes, partition happened, but don't forget that Hindutva was beaten back. In India, that battle was won. 1952, you said. I mean, look at the data for 1952 elections, the first elections, after the Holocaust, after so much refugees, lakhs of people coming in both sides, and the dislocation. And yet, what did the BJP and, not BJP, the Jansangh and Ram Rajya Parishad, which were the two parties espousing that ideology, get? They got some 10 seats in the Lok Sabha. It's 6% of the vote, despite huge dislocation. Because on the other side, there was still that halo of nationalism, which enabled them to counter this ideology. Along with, of course, I think Nehru and the political forces putting up a valiant struggle directly on the issue of secularism. They did not hesitate to use the word secularism. They didn't hesitate to call communalism for what it was. They were not pussyfooting it. They were not using even Hindutva. It was straightforward. This is communalism, and communalism is anti-nationalism. That was the very simple plank. Thank you very much.